Okay, so hi, I'm here with some of our research team for Equality Survey, and you're going to get to hear how we turn your survey responses into information that's going to help shape our equality agenda. So first of all, let's talk with Mostak. So Mostak, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do in your role.
Hi, Nadine. Wonderful to be on this team. My name is Mushtaq Ahmed. I'm a lecturer in finance at the University of Sussex. Currently, involved in development finance, but on the side, I'm also involved in interdisciplinary research like gender pay gap and equality issue at work. So, and in terms of teaching, I teach corporate finance at the University of Sussex, and my role is mainly a research faculty member. So, so that's what I do.
Brilliant, thank you. And so what will you be doing specifically for our survey?
Uh, Mainly, so after the completion of this survey, I'm going to uh, like use those raw data and transform them into like so make them prepare them for the analysis. So I'll be using data statistical software to do that. uh, so in that, I'm going to find out if there are some inconsistency in the data or missing observations. So our prime objectives would be to identify how different groups of peoples in the rail sectors affected for like in terms of equality issues such as bullying, harassments, any other type of discriminations, whether different background or different demographics of people are going to be affected or are being subject to this type of bullying. So I'm going to tease out those aspects from the survey data that I'm going to get.
Brilliant. I think it's really interesting how you take that data and you find what's relevant. So could you share with us how you identify things that are statistically relevant?
So in that case, I would like to share just a small diagram here that I prepared. So how to identify relevant information. I'll just uh, take out this. So, so in that, so any survey data that needs to be representative of the population and population that is rail sectors, right? Let's say there are 20,000 of employees. If we have only 1 or 200 surveys response, it's not going to be enough to claim any particular uh, research questions. Therefore, the sample size has to be large enough uh, in order to uh, robustly claim that something has impact on something else, right? In our case, let's say for BME group has some or they are more likely to be bullied or harassed. To find out, we need some respondents who have background or who are coming from BME background. Therefore, we need to have a diverse group of people responding to these surveys in order to have a large sample that represents the entire population. And only then we'll be able to claim something that it has a robust impact or this group are particularly vulnerable or being subject to some sort of discriminations or harassments at the workplace. So that here for survey is a very complex issues, but my role would be about coding data, coding raw data, and then uh, prepare it in a way that is we can analyze and say significantly that some particular issue has a significant impact on other issues, right? So
Mhm.
without having a large sample, we cannot say that. Uh, So that's why we need a big a group of people or sample participating in this survey and give us a good amount of data. So I'm not going to go through all aspects of it, but here my role would be about stage 6 and stage 5 and stage 6. So coding data and then planning out or designing the research questions to identify the equality issues at rail sector.
Right, excellent. And so our members then and people who are working in the industries that we represent should complete the survey, because we need that large data set, don't we? We need that large group of respondents for you to be able to identify what is relevant and impacts other people as a result of their responses. Yeah. Excellent, thank you. And so you were working on our last survey when we did this before as well. You worked on that, didn't you?
Yes.
How do you feel about continuing the work with TSSA from before?
It is an excellent feeling to be included in the current project as well. From the earlier survey, we had some missing observations. Therefore, we could not claim something very robustly. And which leading to these current projects. So my interest is since the earlier survey was not completed entirely, we could find something, but we could not claim robustly that it has some impact on bullying and harassments. So therefore I was really interested to join in these projects so that I can like complete this research or understanding of this equality issue at rail network. So that was the main reason. And I love to work with Hazel. So that's another issue. I was very involved in this from the very beginning.
All right, well, we're so glad that you have decided to be part of the team again. Thank you very much. Now, Hazel, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do in your role.
Well, I'm a Professor of Human Resource Management at the University of West of England. But my background actually is in industrial sociology and industrial relations. So I focus on what happens at work, particularly employment relations between employers and trade unions. And I've got a particular interest, as you might imagine, on equality at work. So a lot of my research has been based around issues of equal pay, sex discrimination, discrimination more generally in terms of race and disability. And also I'm quite interested in the legislation. So I'm kind of interested in what impact the legislation has in the workplace, and also what are the issues around discrimination that are not well covered by the legislation, and therefore how we could improve the legislation.
Excellent. And which is, very important for us as trade unionists to have that understanding as well, because obviously we rely on the law a lot, but we also realize a lot of it's about interpersonal relationships. And so, so your research always helps us with that. So for our survey, what will you be doing for our survey in particular?
Well, as you know, we helped you to draft the questions. So we kind of decided with the TSSA what the questions should be. So that's the absolutely important part of the beginning of any survey, to try and assess what questions we need to ask to get the information that we need. So we worked with the TSSA in the first survey to draft some questions, and on the basis of what we found from those questions and also what's happened since. So a big difference between the first survey that we did and the survey that we're doing now is obviously we've had a global pandemic, and that's had a huge impact, particularly on transport workers. So we're really, really keen to gather information about the differences between what happened then and what happens now, with a focus in one section of the survey on that particularly relates to the pandemic and its impact on TSSA members. when Mostak has finished the statistical analysis, we look at what he's found, and as a team, we try to make sense of those findings and put them in some kind of theoretical and conceptual framework so that we can better understand what the statistics are telling us. We apply some theories that we already know about, and we apply what we know about the legislation to the findings that we get to try and use those to explain to academic audiences, but also obviously to trade union members, what that data actually means.
Yeah, and I think everyone's very interested in seeing, how things were back when we did the first survey and how things are now, and being able to compare those two things. So
yeah.
Can you share with us some of the interesting findings you found from the last survey that we did?
Yeah, there were some very interesting findings, and one of the things that I think surprised us all was the impact of what academics call intersectionality. So the fact that actually people don't all suffer discrimination, harassment, bullying in the same way at the workplace, and actually the way that can interact with different groups can be quite complex, but also very interesting. So some of the findings that we picked up from the survey, that ethnic minorities, particularly older women ethnic minorities, were more likely to suffer bullying and harassment than younger ethnic minority women, or indeed majority women, or men in the TSSA. So looking at how those things interact, we found was really interesting and really important for the survey. There were some areas, particularly around LGBT issues, where we felt that we didn't have enough data, and that's one of the really important things that we need from the second survey to try and flesh out more about what we know about that group particularly, but also to look in more detail, as Mostak has said, where data was missing originally, to try and fill in those gaps. Yeah.
Right, excellent. And I think we're in particular where we've moved on in that period of time since the last survey is we also recognize that people are experiencing things differently, and that intersectional analysis will be very very interesting and very informative for our next equality agenda work. So in short, why do you think our members and other people working in the industries we represent should complete this TSSA Equality Survey?
Well, I think this is a really fantastic opportunity. I don't think I'm not really aware of another union that's doing these surveys on a regular basis, so we can get a really kind of long-term view of what's happening in relation to equality and diversity within the trade union movement. So I think the TSSA is really leading the way there by holding these regular equality surveys, and it's a real privilege to be able to analyse that data. I think things that are coming out of it are really important for trade union members. We really need to understand these issues. It helps the union in their bargaining, their collective bargaining efforts, but it also helps us to understand where the law isn't working properly. So, for example, intersectionality, we don't have any law in the UK about intersectionality. It was there in the Equality Act. The Conservative government decided to take it out of the Equality Act. And what we really want to argue with this data is it needs to be there. We need legislation that allows us to apply an intersectional approach to protecting people at work. And the TSSA data is really important for helping us to do that.
Brilliant. And finally, how do you feel about continuing this work with TSSA from before?
Oh, like I say, I think I'm really privileged. I think we've shown also that we work very well as a team. We've got a long-term relationship. We've been working together for a long time, and I think there's high levels of trust within the research team, and a level of understanding that we're all working towards the same goals in relation to equality and diversity. I think that's a really important issue. So I'm really privileged to be able to do that. Mostak's quite, he's not sang his praises enough, because he's actually worked out some fantastic statistical analysis that allows us to look at intersectional data, which is quite novel. And so we're really pushing the boundaries in this research in a lot of ways, both politically, legally, from a collective bargaining perspective, but also from an academic perspective in relation to theory, and how we can go forward in analysing intersectional data in the future. It's quite complex. It's not an easy thing to do, as I'm sure Mostak would agree there.
Well, look, thank you so much, both of you, for doing this little interview with us. I'm sure our members will be very interested in seeing this side of the surveys. I think people in rail are so used to filling out surveys now, but they never get to speak to the people and have an understanding of what you do to make that, to bring that information to life, so that we can use it in a way that creates meaningful change. So thank you so much. And yeah, we look forward to seeing the results of all of your hard work.
That's great.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hazel.